We're all taught the American Civil War was fought over slavery and preserving the Union. While those were undeniably major factors, what if I told you there's a deeper, more hidden layer to this story? A story not about states' rights or moral crusades, but about money, power, and a battle for America's financial soul. This is the story of how the Civil War was, at its core, a financial war, a sophisticated chess match between a young, ambitious nation and the powerful international banking elites who wanted to keep it in their grip. To understand this, we need to look at the American economy before the war. The Southern economy, built on cotton, was not as independent as it seemed. It was essentially a colonial-style economy, deeply entangled with and dependent on European, particularly British, financiers. The entire cotton trade, from planting the seeds to shipping the bales, was financed through a complex web of credit, loans, and debt, all originating from the banking houses of London and Paris. Southern planters were perpetually in debt to these foreign bankers, who controlled the prices, the shipping, and the terms of credit. The South was, in many ways, an economic colony of Europe. Meanwhile, in the North, a different economic model was taking shape. This was the American system, a vision championed by figures like Henry Clay and later Abraham Lincoln. It was built on three pillars: protective tariffs to shield its growing industries from foreign competition, a national bank to provide stable credit, and federal funding for infrastructure projects like canals and railroads to connect the country. This system was designed to create a self-sufficient, internally strong, and industrially powerful nation, free from dependence on European manufacturing and finance. This rising industrial power in the North posed a direct threat to the economic dominance of Great Britain and other European powers. They preferred an America that remained a supplier of raw materials and a consumer of their finished goods, not a competitor. When Abraham Lincoln was elected, these financial tensions reached a boiling point. The international bankers saw his American system as a declaration of economic independence. They feared a unified, industrialized America, protected by tariffs, would break free from their control. A divided America, however, was a weak America. An independent confederacy, reliant on free trade and foreign credit, would perfectly serve their interests, keeping the continent fragmented and dependent. From their perspective, a civil war wasn't a tragedy, it was an opportunity. As the war began, the Union needed massive amounts of money to fund its army. Lincoln's administration first turned to the major banking houses in New York and Europe. Their offer was shocking. They demanded interest rates as high as 24 to 36%, an astronomical price that would have plunged the United States into crippling, generational debt before the first major battle was even fought. Lincoln recognized this for what it was: financial blackmail. He understood that winning the war on the battlefield would be meaningless if the nation lost its economic sovereignty in the process. This is where Lincoln made his most revolutionary move, a decision that history books often overlook. He sidestepped the international bankers entirely. With the authority of Congress, he initiated the printing of a new form of currency, known as the United States note, or the greenback. What made the greenback so radical? It was debt-free, interest-free money issued directly by the U.S. Treasury. It was based not on gold or silver, but on the full faith and credit of the United States government itself. This was a direct challenge to the entire private banking system, which profits from lending money created out of thin air and charging interest on it. Lincoln was essentially declaring that the American government had the sovereign right to create its own money to serve the needs of its people, without indebting them to private financiers. The greenback system worked. It allowed the Union to pay its soldiers, buy supplies, and fund the immense war effort without falling into the trap of insurmountable debt. This act of financial independence was seen as a far greater threat to the international banking establishment than the war itself. The Times of London, a mouthpiece for the financial interests of the city, wrote with alarm, "If that mischievous financial policy should become indurated down to a fixture, then the government will furnish its own money without cost. It will pay off debts and be without debt. It will have all the money necessary to carry on its commerce. It will become prosperous beyond precedent in the history of the civilized governments of the world. That government must be destroyed, or it will destroy every monarchy on the globe." But the story gets even more complex. While the Union was fighting for its survival with its own sovereign money, who was funding the Confederacy? The answer leads back to the very same European banking circles. The Confederacy, with its commitment to free trade and its reliance on cotton as collateral, was a much more attractive partner for these financiers. A French banking house, for example, floated a massive cotton loan for the Confederacy, effectively allowing European investors to bet on a Southern victory. This reveals the cold, calculated logic of high finance. The bankers were funding both sides of the conflict. By doing so, they ensured that no matter who won, America would emerge from the war weakened and deeply in debt, forced to come back to them for reconstruction funds. They profited from the bloodshed and guaranteed their own long-term control. Throughout the war, there was a constant battle behind the scenes to undermine Lincoln's greenback system. The banking interests lobbied Congress relentlessly, pushing for legislation that would force the government back onto a gold standard and restore the power of private banks to issue currency. They understood that as long as the government could create its own debt-free money, their business model of profiting from national debt was obsolete. Then, on April 14th, 1865, just as the war was ending, Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. While we will never know all the forces at play behind that tragic event, the consequences for America's financial future were immediate and catastrophic. With Lincoln gone, the powerful political will needed to defend the greenback system vanished. The financial interests that he had held at bay swept back into power. In the years following Lincoln's death, the greenbacks were systematically withdrawn from circulation. The country was forced back onto the gold standard, a system that constrained the money supply and concentrated financial power in the hands of those who owned the gold, the international bankers. Congress passed the National Banking Act of 1866, which taxed state-issued currencies out of existence and solidified the power of a few large, federally chartered private banks to control the nation's money supply. The dream of a debt-free American republic, powered by its own sovereign currency, died with Lincoln. America was pushed back into the very system of banker-controlled debt that Lincoln had fought so hard to escape. The American Civil War, in this light, becomes a blueprint for a new kind of warfare. It demonstrated how a conflict could be instigated and manipulated not just for political or ideological goals, but for immense financial profit and control. It was a model for creating debt-fueled wars, where bankers fund both sides, reap the rewards of the conflict, and then profit again by financing the reconstruction, ensnaring nations in a cycle of debt. This hidden history doesn't erase the importance of slavery or the struggle for the Union. It adds a crucial and often intentionally ignored dimension. It shows that the Civil War was also a battle for economic self-determination. It was a clash between two fundamentally different visions for America. One as a sovereign nation in control of its own destiny, and the other as a client state, forever indebted to a global financial elite. Looking back, we can see the long shadow this financial war has cast. The system of central banking and national debt that was reestablished after Lincoln's death is the very system that dominates the globe today. It shapes our economies, influences our governments, and is often a hidden factor in modern conflicts. By understanding this deeper story of the Civil War, we gain a new perspective on our own world and the powerful, unseen forces that continue to shape it. The battle for America's financial soul, fought over 150 years ago, is a battle that, in many ways, is still being waged. Thank you for watching. If this look into the hidden history of finance and power interests you, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive.